The war between Iran, Israel, and the United States is not only fought in the battlefield, it is being fought in stations, ports, and even in supermarkets around the world. Because when conflict breaks out in the Middle East, it is not only armies that are affected, it is the entire economy that is affected.
A vital passageway for the world, all but shut down. U.S. President Donald Trump put out a call for other countries to come help open up the Strait of Hormuz. But according to Iran's foreign minister, it's his country getting the phone calls.
The Financial Times is reporting that European diplomats from France and Italy are talking to your government about trying to get safe passage for their ships. Are you open to restarting oil and gas vessels going through there?
Well, we are open to countries who want to talk to us about the safe passage of their vessels.
You are negotiating with France and Italy?
I cannot mention any country in particular, but we have been approached by a number of countries who want to have a safe passage for their vessels.
And today, several signs show that the war is already sending economic shock waves across the planet.
The United States is exporting more liquefied natural gas than ever before. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, LNG exports recorded a 25% jump from 2024 levels. At the same time, domestic production is also rising. Marketed natural gas output is expected to hit a record by 2027. Higher prices are incentivizing drilling, and associated gas production from oil-focused basins is also increasing. And on the surface, rising production appears sufficient to support both exports and domestic demand.
The Middle East remains the heart of the world energy system, and Iran sees to an energetic, absolute, critical strategic point. This maritime passage is one of the most sensitive points in the global economy. Every day, approximately 20% of the world oil and large share of liquefied natural gas flow through the shipping route. In other words, any disruption in this area can immediately shake the entire economy, and that is what is beginning to happen now. With military tensions and attacks around the Gulf, oil markets have become extremely nervous. Oil prices have surpassed $100 per barrel, fueling fears of a global energy shock. And when oil becomes more expensive, the consequences spread everywhere. Fuel prices rise, transportation becomes more costly, industries that depend on energy see their costs explode, and these costs always end up being passed on the consumers. In other words, a regional war can quickly become a global inflation. The global economy depends heavily on maritime shipping. That is, more than 80% of the world trade travels by sea.
But critics point out Trump doesn't have the only vote on when this war ends.
But as we have seen, our enemy also has a vote on when things end. And if Iran keeps blowing up ships or trying to blow up ships in the Strait, and gas prices continue to go up and up for Americans, then it is very foreseeable we could become even more entrenched in this.
An ongoing conflict in the Middle East with increasing costs for the entire world.
But when trade road arises in strategic military regions, it makes trade appear far more riskier. Ships can be delayed while shipping companies may reroute their vessels. Cargo insurance costs increase, and every increase in price is seen in the final product. This means that products traveling along this route, oil, gas, raw materials, and industrial goods becomes more expensive. In a globalized economy, the cost increases can affect nearly every sector. When energy and transportation price rises, a well-known phenomenon appears. Inflation. Economists explain it as a sustained rise in oil price can add approximately 0.6 to 0.7% of the global inflation. That may seem small, but for major economists, it is enormous.
Look then at the importance of the Strait of Hormuz. Well, at its narrowest point, the strait is about 33 kilometers wide, but its shipping lanes are even narrower. Iran controls the north side of the strait, while Oman controls the south. An estimated 20% of the world's oil is transported through the waterway. Some of it goes to Europe. Nearly half of China's crude imports transit through the Strait of Hormuz. Qatar also depends heavily on the strait to export its liquefied natural gas. Around 90% of the LNG that passes through the strait heads to Asia, including China. In Europe, countries including France, Germany and Italy source roughly 10% of their oil imports through the strait, a critical maritime choke point. And closing it could potentially remove more than 17 billion barrels of oil from the global market, driving up prices and straining energy supply.
Higher inflation means banks must act. They may slow the pace of interest rate cuts. They may heighten their monetary policy, and this might slow the global economic growth. This means that a war can transform a geopolitical economic war into a macroeconomic one, but the effect doesn't stop there.
So what do these price differences mean? To give you an idea, 40 liters of fuel now cost $110 in the Netherlands, which was $91 before the war. In Germany, the same amount of fuel now costs $91, which was $80 before the war. And in Belgium, it is now $80, up from $71.
Well, the price difference with the Netherlands is so great that, even making the trip makes it very much worthwhile to come here.
Investors hate uncertainty, and the war between Israel, the United States and Iran create that uncertainty. When tension rises, market becomes unstable. Investors seek protection, some withdraw their capital, others turn towards assets considered safer. The result, volatility increases across financial markets. And this instability can affect markets, businesses, investment, and even long-term industrial projects. But there is yet another economic consequences. Not all countries are equal when facing energy shock. But for more developing countries, the situation is far more difficult. Economies that rely heavily on energy import may see their energy bills skyrocket. Government must then spend more subsidized fuel. Public deficit can grow, and in some cases, this triggered economic and social crises. This is why some international officials are warning that this crisis may have a negative impact on more and less political countries. And finally, there is one last economic risk, the far most and worst scenario. If military tensions durably disrupt the oil Gulf exports or partially close the Strait of Hormuz, the economic impact will be disastrous.
Now, Brent crude has jumped to around $80 a barrel as tensions escalate in the Gulf.
Analysts now warn prices could move closer to $90 or even $100 in no time. The immediate concern is the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow waterway that handles roughly 20 million barrels per day. That's about one-fifth of global oil supply. It transits through this route, along with a similar share of global LNG trade.
In an extreme scenario, the price of oil could reach $130 per barrel or more. Such a surge could slow global growth and even cause a contraction in global GDP. Some estimates suggest a possible decline of nearly 0.8 in world GDP in a scenario of major disruption. In other words, a regional war could trigger a planetary economic risk.
Everybody from Wall Street to Main Street is trying to navigate the growing economic risks created by the war with Iran. As far as the markets are concerned, all three finished higher for the day, even as oil prices resumed their climb, with Brent crude finishing above the $100 mark. If you have been watching this show, then you already know what it means for your wallet. Higher oil prices translate to higher prices for gas, diesel, and even jet fuel, all the things that keep our economy, not just our economy, but the global economy humming along.
And this is the reality of modern economy. In a globalized world, the war never truly remains local. A crisis in the Gulf can rise up prices in Europe. A missile fired in the Middle East can rattle markets in Asia. And oil disruption can affect consumers in every continent. Therefore, the war between Israel, Iran, and the United States is not only a geopolitical war, but a test to the economy. Because the real question is not who will win the military battlefield, but the question is how much will the world have to pay for this?